We have a very special episode for all of you tuning in to Real Talk today. We all know that hurricanes are a major factor when you're living in South Louisiana and how crucial it is to be prepared. Joining me on this episode is my good friend and neighbor, Steven Snyder, where he shares his life-threatening experiences during Hurricane Katrina. And it's just an incredible story that I believe everyone across coastal U.S. should hear about and reflect on during hurricane season. So guys, I am super pumped to have my good friend Steven here today. Cannot wait for y'all to hear this amazing story. And hopefully you'll leave here today with not only the story, but also, a warning as to, what can happen. I mean, we're in hurricane season right now here in Louisiana. And I really didn't understand or appreciate the magnitude of the danger that you could put your family into until I met Steven. So Steven, man, thank you so much for being here today. And, just appreciate you taking the time and sharing the story with us.
I've done it a couple of times before, not all the way start to finish. With some people, they just want to hear a couple of things enough to scare them. But when I got to sit down and start telling you, I remember that it was so devastating that I'm still affected when I do tell the story. Yeah. But that's a good thing because I don't want to get relaxed in knowing that when it's hurricane season, I should have some kind of plan. I should be aware that I want to do the right thing for my family. So when I tell it, it does bring me back, and it's like a memory I'll have forever. Of course, I'm never going to forget about. I'm going to refer to myself with some terminology. I'm not here to offend anybody that stayed or lost family in the Hurricane Katrina, but it was an idiotic thing for me to do. I was naive to think, today you're just going to pack 4 days worth of stuff, leave for the hurricane, come back like you used to. Yeah. Only this time we said, we're not running from this hurricane. Nothing's going to happen. So it was not a smart thing to do. And I call myself those terms because that's what I would have said to myself back then to get myself to leave. Leave now. Right.
So if you could go back in time and tell yourself, this is what you would have said. Well, before we dive in, Steven, let's talk about because you used to live in Chalmette. Tell us a little bit about your history before we get into the story. Where do you work now, and how you and I met?
Okay. Before the hurricane, I lived in south of New Orleans, which is on the east bank of the Mississippi River, south in St. Bernard Parish, even further south than Chalmette and the bayou communities of like the Hopedale, White Closkey, Reggio areas. And before that, we had only ran from a couple hurricanes just because we were able to. And we thought, let's just get away from now. We don't know what this hurricane was about. I don't remember leaving so many times as I do remember rebuilding our house a lot after the damage of the hurricane, being a kid. But I was working offshore at the time with Baker Hughes, and we worked out of Venice. I was with my wife, Christina. We weren't married yet. But I went on my days off. Katrina came. And we survived that, and I came to Lafayette, and I found Baker Hughes. I said, let me go check with them and see what happened, and my boss happened to be there, and I didn't miss not one day of work, even though I stayed for Katrina. And
so you left right after Katrina to Lafayette, so you're a Katrina refugee here in Lafayette, and luckily your Baker Hughes is everywhere in Louisiana, so you just moved to this location.
Yep, and just started working there. Was taken in by my family members, and after a while we found our own place, and then we live, behind the Home Depot in Broussard. It was a great place, and telling the story with you again.
Yeah, and so our paths met when you actually bought one of our listings in our neighborhood.
Yep.
Which we're neighbors now, and so I remember Nate, our other neighbor, went and we brought a bottle of tequila to you, just to introduce ourselves. And it just so happened that day we were off because Ida was coming. Remember, I don't know if you remember, you were just moving in.
Yeah, I was trying to do
and
work to the house.
You were working on the house. And so Nate and I came over, and I guess because usually we're not at home, but we must have been at home because people were getting ready for the Hurricane Ida, which was 2 years ago. And I remember meeting you, and you told us the story because you were like, yeah, I'm leaving. I remember you're like, I'm out, dude. And me and Dave were like, why would you leave? I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It's a hurricane. We're used to those things. And you told us this just incredible story. And I know we've all heard like the stories. We've all saw it on TV. Like I've been to the museums in New Orleans, but honestly, it was moving to hear it from some firsthand account of like that tragedy. I thought it was very moving, and it changed the way that I think about hurricanes and preparing for and really protecting my family, you know. So I'm super pumped that you're here and sharing the story here with everybody, with all of our audience. And so let's start from the beginning, man. Like, tell us, like, back in 2005, right before Hurricane Katrina was even going to come to Louisiana. Like, where were you guys? Where were y'all, and what was going through your mind back then?
I want to start where me and my wife, or we was not married at the time, my cousin says, let's go to Biloxi one day. So we going that way, and we realize there's a lot of traffic, but it's a lot of traffic going the wrong direction. So we end up in Biloxi, and we're just swimming at the beach, and they're like, this is a nice breeze. And my cousin says, yeah, it's the hurricane. I'm like, all right, yeah, who cares? Hurricane.
Yeah.
And he says, no, Steve, this is like a bad to the bone hurricane. You got to see. So we had a nice time at the beach. They're like, what y'all going to do? I said, we ain't going to do nothing like usual. We're going to stay. So my cousin almost got talked into saying, yeah, we're going to stay too.
So you're talking somebody else into staying at this point. Yeah.
Up to this point, I have no clue how bad this hurricane is. We hadn't watched not a lick of news. And so I said, okay, so we had the day at the beach. We come back, and again, there's no traffic because nobody's going towards New Orleans. And we go home, and no sooner did we get home, and my cousin goes to his house, and we just kind of unpacking and talking about the day and getting ready for the night. My cousin calls me. He's like, Steve, we're leaving. I was like, that's why? He said, this hurricane is the baddest hurricane to ever be in the Gulf. So this guy's over-exaggerating. So we turned on the news for like 10 minutes, and me and Christina were like, all right, what are we going to do? I don't know what happened in my head, but just because we agreed to stay when we was at Biloxi, we said, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stick to my guns. We're staying. And we stopped watching the news. Yeah. And up to that point, I think it already was trying to make the turn towards the city.
And you're south of New Orleans at this point. You're closer. You're in between like Chalmette and Venice, that area.
I'm between New Orleans and Slidell.
Oh, okay. So you're in Chalmette at that point.
And I was actually living in Chalmette, correct. In fact, you can see that bridge that connects the Intercoastal Canal, across the Intercoastal Canal right there in Michoud. And it put us at a horrible position when the way the hurricane came and pushed that water from the Gulf into Lake Pontchartrain, into Lake Bourne. We didn't stand a chance. And we didn't know anything like that. We just knew. I made up my mind to stay. Yeah. And we're going to stay. So
now, I know you were from that area, so it wasn't just you. You had other family members, right, around there? Like,
yeah. And there goes one of the first chaotic points. All of our family left.
Oh, everybody left, and you are
grandma from way down in Hopedale, in Wyclosky. All my uncles and cousins and aunts, and even the cousin that came with us to Biloxi, they left. And that was just me, my Christina, my brother-in-law. And some way or reason, my other sister stayed in another part of Lower St. Bernard as well. She's like, we're staying. So we got all brave together. Like, okay, this is what we're going to do. If it's really bad, we'll go close to my sister's house and my dad's place, and we're going to stay there, me, Christina, and my brother-in-law.
So your brother-in-law, your sister, Christina?
No, me and my dad's house ended up being me, my brother-in-law and Christina. That's it, 3 of us in one house. And then maybe like 2 other people in the whole neighborhood. Nobody stayed. And then my sister stayed at her place, not even 5 miles away. Okay, still south of New Orleans.
And she has a family with her?
She had a family with her, her son, her husband, and her in-laws, her parents. So everybody starts leaving. They're telling us, you have to leave. They're getting super mad at us. And my dad says, well, I say, I'm staying at my dad's house. And I guess that made some people a little happy, but as we were down at my dad's house, we realized it was getting really bad. Everybody we could think of in my life started calling us, pleading with us to leave. So we thought, okay, this is a great house. This is the best house I've ever been in. My dad's house was a great house. We're going to stay here. We're going to be fine. Just so naive. didn't think the right things, except for my brother-in-law says, I have a cordless saw. In case the water comes up into the attic, we'll cut ourselves out. Like, that was a better plan than leaving.
Right.
Up to that point, I don't think...
Which, thank God, at this, looking back, that he thought of that. I would have never even, if I'm staying, I probably would have not even thought of that.
I guess. So, that was a good... That made...
I mean, what would have made y'all think of that? I guess when you live down there, you actually think, like, okay, that's a safety deal? Like, you need a saw?
This comes from history from the hurricanes Camille and Betsy, where people drowned in their attics and they couldn't get out.
Okay, so that's where it's from, like, y'all. Like,
Yeah, we were like, okay.
And that was Camille and Betsy was when?
In the 60s, maybe?
Okay, so back in the 60s, there's some people who water came up and they got into the attic and didn't have anything to get out of there.
Correct. So that made it some kind of weird reason to give us fuel to want to stay even more. Up to this point, though, I don't think we could have made it out anyway. The routes going out through Slidell or through Baton Rouge were totally, saturated with traffic and bumper-to-bumper traffic, people leaving it too late. And the other idea that we had is, like, I worked offshore, so I had a life jacket with me because I brought it with me offshore, and I had it with my luggage, me and my brother on this house. Like, we have life jackets and saws. We're going to stay. And that was horrible. So, so we're there. Everybody's still calling. They called and called and called until the last minute, till all the phones went out. And cell phones, believe it or not, will go out when everything else goes out because the cell towers don't work. Most of the time, they're destroyed. And this was way back in the day when phones were crappy enough anyway that if you just had bad weather, you couldn't get a good reception.
Yeah.
But one of the last times was the storm had come in real strong. We knew we was in it. Whatever happened, we was there. There was no escaping. And my dad was on the phone with me and he says, Steven, I want you to get out. You can make it. Get in the truck and go to this school. There was a school about a mile and a half away. Beautiful school, had been there for years and years and years, elevated. He said, go there, you got to go there. And you can make it to the school.
Your dad called you? Or?
Yeah, he still had the ability to call our cell phones. The house phones weren't working. It was our cell phones that was working. The house, the electricity was
So it's you and Christina and your brother-in-law. Your dad's saying, hey, get the hell out, go to the...
Like, you have one last chance. You can make it out. You can make it. And I had to tell my dad over the phone. I said, Dad, I don't think I can make it 1 mile. It was that bad. Things were flying. Everything you can imagine was flying. You don't think a chain link fence can fly, but it can fly. Trees, pieces of your house, anything in your yard was flying, and that's what we dealt.
I mean, what was that like? Like, what did it sound like? What was? I mean, I can't imagine like that kind of force. Like, what does it sound like?
It's very hard to describe because it was so terrifying that you just didn't know where the damage was coming from in the house. Because the way we took a direct hit of the eye, and so the strongest winds that could hit St. Bernard hit us too. And for the most part, the wind was so strong and loud. Our parents used to say, well, for a tornado, we was all afraid of tornadoes. We weren't afraid of hurricanes. That tornado, you sounds like a train outside. And I heard what sounded like a train for 8 hours straight. I could tell if a tornado was coming from that.
The whole thing was a tornado.
Yes. So
it did sound like a train coming through.
That and everything else.
Yeah.
The background sound of the high pressure and high speed wind was deafening. It felt like somebody had an air hose straight to your ear and just let it off for 8 hours straight. And then we didn't know what part of the house to hide in because we can hear the things hitting outside the house and landing on the roof. We didn't know what room to go into. We was just losing it, and we were so scared. And
So where did y'all go?
We ended up in one of the closets of my dad's. We had a double closet. One was closer to the middle of the house. And we got there, and I remember Christine was like, I had enough of this, y'all. We terrorizing ourselves by we look out the door, looking out the door and getting scared and coming inside and hiding and looking out some more. So she just said prayer and went to sleep in the closet, which was weird to me that she was sleeping, but at the same time, it was trying to calm me down. I'm like, okay, let's just wait this thing out. There's nothing we could do but wait it out. And that's what we did. It got really bad for a long time. Like I said, if you stay in a hurricane, it's not over quick like a tornado. It takes forever. And the worst haunting thing it usually never hits in the daytime.
Yeah.
So I think Katrina hit at midnight, and we was there till 8 in the morning with no light and all this noise outside. And it was just, there's a lot to bear.
It's crazy, brother. So y'all are in the closet now. All three of y'all are in one closet?
Yeah.
Y'all are just in that closet, just keeping the door shut, and wind's blowing. The noise is like it's in your ear.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it.
No.
Shit's hitting the whole house. Your house is basically falling apart. I'm sure. Like you lost a lot of your shingles and roof. And
my dad's house did well, but we was just blessed that the house was fairly new. I would consider it new for that area. Beautiful brick home, but it just the bricks, the things hitting the bricks, you can tell it just was horrible outside. Whatever was happening, these stuff that just hit the house.
So it hit around midnight, and then you got 8 hours until like 8:30 in the morning, and then you hit the eye in the morning. Okay. Is that right?
Yes. Right about the eye, Tom, was one of the most amazing things I never thought I would experience. I had experienced before in other hurricanes, but it didn't seem so devastating. Was when the eye came, it was just pure calmness for maybe, I don't know, a couple hours, and we was walking outside, just outside the door. We couldn't make it very far because trees were everywhere. You couldn't walk, between me to you. But we looked up in the eye, and you could see it's like you can hang a framing square up there. The cloud was so defined with the eye that it was just perfect. This storm was just formed just so. It was pretty amazing to behold. But I felt it was like a sense of relief, but we had the backside of the eye later to deal with.
Because I remember, I think you told me, like, you looked up in the sky and the birds were just not moving, right? Like,
yes, that and the pelicans, which, believe it or not, in Louisiana state bird, the pelican, these things are bad to the bone. Because the pelicans were up there on the top of the eye, and they were holding like they usually do, but they were going backwards. And they were just...
They were just going backwards.
Yeah, the wind was blowing them backwards, but they was able to hold their, with the way they designed. I couldn't believe that. That and seagulls. Seagulls out there because they good flying birds, I guess. I'll never forget that I seen those birds way up there. Like, look at this. And it was kind of entertaining in a way. It's giving us a little hope, a little comfort. Yeah. So we actually was able to contact at that point a family member. I can't remember if it was my dad. And we said, yeah, this and that, nothing. It's okay. We okay and stuff like this. And I hung up the phone. And then that's when, right then, we got that conversation off with the phone. I'm thinking this is all over with. We got a little bit of the backside of my dad. Yeah. I think it was my dad because he's like, you're going to have the backside for like another 7 hours. And it might not be so bad, but it might be a tornado too. Everybody knows a southeastern eye or southwest eye is bad for tornadoes. We didn't think nothing about that because what was about to happen, I never would have thought. So we got off the phone with him on that. Was getting ready for the backside of the eye, looking around, see what we can use, if they had anything. We couldn't see very well because there was still no electricity. And right about then, my brother-in-law says, look, somebody's coming down the street. And we knew that was not a correct phrase because nobody else is here. And we looked, and we could see this car coming, and it looked strange because the car wasn't moving forward. And it was coming down like this, and it went down into this little canal. And it came flying up the other side, and it landed and crashed. And it was because a wall of water was pushing it. It was pushing it from, I guess it would be the northeast side of St. Bernard. From Lake Bourne, all that water had came in, crossed the levee, crossed some dry land, crossed some marsh, then another levee, and was washing in into the land, into the neighborhood we was at, my dad's house. And
so you're looking down the street and you think what you see somebody driving, but it's really a car just being pushed by a big wall of water, and then you notice, and you're like, wait a second, that's not right. That's just a big wall of water.
Yeah.
And so what'd you do then? Like,
So we,
at this point, you're like, oh shit, that's not a car coming down.
yeah, something struck me in my mind right then and there. It changed my life. I wasn't too afraid of the water. Like I said, I had life jackets. I had been raised around water. I didn't think the water was that devastating. But when I seen the water that high coming, I knew that my hometown, New Orleans, would never be the same again. Mm-hmm. I knew it was totally ruined. This water was covering the ground, and we were about to be flooded. Mm-hmm. And it really shook me, and it changed the way I look and look about that area and the storm, what it can do. So we sat there, was at all. Our jaw was dropped, the three of us out on this door stoop, and the water started to come to our feet and start rushing in the front of the door stoop. And Christine's like, get inside, y'all. So we closed the door. Seemed like we didn't have much time at all to get whatever was valuable and bring it with us into the attic, but we decided to go into the attic. We pushed a 110-pound Labrador Retriever up the attic stairs. 2 cats.
You got your pets there too, right? Forgot about that. You got like your dogs, your cats.
2 cats, a bird, I want to say. I can't remember if we still had
You had a dove?
a dove.
Because you collect doves now. That's right.
So we made our way into the house. We did snap a picture. I failed to bring a picture, sorry. Outside the door, my dad's door had a glass pane on it, and you could see the water on the outside of the door is about 4 or 5 foot high, but the water inside the house was like 1 foot or 2.
Right.
And the water was just spraying out the door jambs like this, coming into the house.
Wow.
And it was getting very overwhelming to see that. And all we could do was like, let's get in the attic.
That was your dad's house on a slab, or was it was on a slab on the ground, or was it raised?
On a slab on the ground.
Yeah.
So all that water, as high as it was outside at 5 foot, it was trying to fill up the house. And we were in it, and now we really knew there's no place to go but the attic. We climbed in the attic where we originally prepared.
Yeah, because you can't go outside. You got a freaking wall of water coming. There's no other place to go but the attic.
Yeah. And we get up there where we prepared the saw from before. The saw is up there. There's nothing for us up there. There's nothing to eat or drink. We don't know how long we're going to be in this attic, and it gets pitch black. Once the water starts filling up the door, we're in this attic, and it is pitch black. We felt the water on our feet. You know how like an attic door, you see the floor? It came all the way up into the attic with us.
God.
So that was like, about this size ceiling. This is 9-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
That's about how much it was in my dad's house. So at that point, in less than 2 hours, the water was 9 feet high. And we was in the attic.
Do you have some flashlights or something? Or
I don't remember having a flashlight because I couldn't see anything.
Couldn't see
nothing. And we did, something was shining because I remember.
Because it's in the morning, but there's no windows in the attic. So,
right.
As soon as the water's up to the attic, you can't see anything.
That's right. As soon as it filled it up, and as soon as we see the water touch the attic door, it's like we're looking into like one of those diving pools. It's like, or we are not going out that way. So my brother starts cutting through the roof with the saw, and we cut a big enough hole for all three of us to kind of just stand up and look around and get some fresh air. Because it was in the middle of Talia. Don't forget, when you stay during a hurricane, it's usually summer. So every place is hot. Yeah. So we're in the attic. It's summertime.
Yeah.
We have to cut this hole. So having the hole and looking at
just to breathe.
We was breathing. And that was incredible. We open this hole. We get out, the three of us, looking everywhere, and all you see is water. No houses. You could barely see roofs of some houses. And I was like, this is amazing. Look at the water that came here. And I guess I realized then, how far is this water going? Who else is flooded? Because that was 9 feet of water in a place where there's usually no water. So how far up the St. Bernard Parish to go? They go to New Orleans, and later on, cracking on out, it was all the way that bad to Biloxi, actually.
Yeah.
So we stayed in the attic. I can't remember how long. Seems like hours. And they still had the backside of the eye blowing at us while we standing out looking at this hole. And the backside of the eye is just blowing all over the place. It was really rough. And so when it finally calmed down, we made a plan to try to get some type of boat or something, a boat we seen across the street. And we was trying to come up with ways to do it safely because by this time we were so terrorized and we didn't know if we can make it to the boat because the water was rushing in the street like a river. And we was actually going to tie this extension cord to ourselves and go across so far and pull the other one across to get to this boat.
Yeah.
Which we didn't even know if it worked or not.
Yeah.
So we thought that was a bad idea. And we waited a while and somebody else pulled up in the boat and brought us, and we all started making our way toward rescue. That was the first morning. And so it's kind of emotional thinking when we was leaving, we got on this guy's boat with them and a couple of people that was with him. And he says, no, you got to leave your animals. And Christina is a pet lover. She's a pet. She knows how to care for animals. And for us to leave our dog sitting in this attic, we don't know who's coming to help him. It was pretty bad. So that's one thing you got to remember when you run from a hurricane. You don't want to be haunted by that. Take your pets with you.
Yeah.
So,
so what happened? So
fortunately, he took us out. We got so far about a mile up the road, and we met some other people that had been collecting from the neighborhoods that were flooded. And we was at this one person's house, and he said, we're going to go here, we're going to take you here, we're going to take you to the school. We're thinking of these places that might be like points to extract and points to rescue us, but we didn't really know because nobody's in charge and we don't have any way to communicate. So we kept on moving north into St. Bernard from where we were.
In a boat?
In a certain boat with him. And then we went through another neighborhood, the three of us and some people on that boat that he had. And I said, pull over right here. I see a boat floating in the grass. So me and my brother went to that boat and it had keys in it and it was attached to a trailer, but we cut the trailer loose and the keys cranked up the boat. It had gas and everything. And we used that boat just on our own, just me, Christine, and my brother-in-law. But first we went back to go get
the dogs.
And then we met up with Christina at the high school. We went to St. Bernard High School. It wasn't very far south, it wasn't much further south than in Chalmette. But that's where we had her and the dogs, and we went to my.
And at this point, Steven, this is just literally a lake. There's no land.
No, not
at this point, and this is like 10 o'clock in the morning or something.
Yeah.
After Katrina hit at midnight.
Yeah. It's about 10 or 12 in the afternoon or in the early noon.
Yeah. So like the water came around 8:30, 9 o'clock. Y'all cut the hole in, a couple of hours, and now y'all somebody does show up with a boat. You're with them, but you had to leave your pets, which was unacceptable. So,
Correct. And so when we got the boat, we decided, okay, we got our own rescue plan now, so we're going back and get the dog. And we meet up with Christina at the school, and we need to know what's wrong if my sister's okay. And
because you haven't been able to talk to her yet.
No. And we know she's down there, so.
And she's got her father-in-law, and she's got kids.
Her son was, I think, 8 or 9 at the time, she had a pretty emotional time dealing with that, knowing but it is what it is. They live, they learn. But we had to know what was up with her. So her house wasn't too far from the high school, which ended up being a big rescue point for a lot of stuff. And so we made it to her house, and they were all okay. And we ended up.
And did they have to get in the attic too, or were they?
Oh, yeah.
Were they able to get in the roof, or?
They were not staying in the house. We kind of like refuged in. They were living in a different house right next door, and they got into the attic, and it was much lower than ours, and they didn't have a saw.
Oh, Jesus.
So my brother-in-law.
So they had to get in the attic, and there was no saw.
No saw, and it was even lower, so the water came into the attic with them, and they was floating around inside the attic.
God.
And thankfully, my brother-in-law found this son's baseball bat, and he started busting out. This is an older roof that has slats instead of plywood. Yeah. So he starts busting some of those boards, and that's what they got out of.
Holy cow, bro.
Yeah. So
that is scary, huh?
Yeah, but when we met them, we met them in their house that they were building at the time, and so we stayed there for that night for a whole night and started thinking what we was going to do. In that boat, they had a handheld radio. We tried to talk to anybody in the Coast Guard. They said hi, but they didn't want to tell us what to do because basically we were the ones that stayed down there. That wasn't going to come rescue us.
Yeah.
So that was the first night. The next day,
All right, what did they say? Like,
nothing.
we hear you, but you're on your own, bro.
Yeah, you're on your own. There was a weird call on that radio. They said somebody was talking on that radio, and I said, I was listening. They said, we need insulin. And I knew what that meant, but I hope the person's okay now. But it's like, what you think? That's the pharmacy, is that radio. If anybody has insulin, they want to know, how can I get it? I need it.
Yeah.
So we don't know whatever happened with them. But so the next day,
did the water? Well, I mean, this is the storm surge. This isn't from a levee busting. This is a storm surge. This is just straight up storm. And so, did that retract that day, or did it stay?
No, it seemed like it didn't go down much day by day, which it took us 4 days to get out. It didn't seem like it was going down very much. We had a lot of water day by day. I don't think I would have been able to walk in the water. It was that high. So we stayed with the boat, and every place you wanted to move around, you had to take the boat. And that's what we did the next day. We ended up finding a way to move further north into St. Bernard, into Chalmette. And we did something, the only thing we knew to do was to go by places that we knew. And we ended up at my sister's friend's house in Chalmette. And that's where we made camp for a couple of days. And we ended up, while we were there, we made our way there.
Were some of these houses like above the water line?
No, they still flooded.
They all flooded.
Yeah, we just floated up to the house and got onto the second story window and slept on the roof of this house.
Oh, you sleeping on roofs at this point? Yeah. You're going to their houses, but there's still no place to lay.
And inside the house was stinking because all of the water is just starting to just be stagnant.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too bad because we just stayed outside. It was hot, but it wasn't too bad. Yeah. Along the way, we played it. What we thought we could do was just get smart, and we found the pharmacy, Walgreens. We got in there and got as much cleaning supplies as we could, and we found, unfortunately, there was lots of drinking water. There was lots of soap, rubbing alcohol. We picked up some disposable cameras and we was using them to take pictures. But in that pharmacy, a lot of people was just collecting alcohol and drugs.
Leaving the water and
so we had all the water we needed. We had all the antibacterial soap and rubbing alcohol that we was using to sterile to sanitize ourselves.
Yeah.
And it was pretty neat to see that, to go inside there. And I waited for my brother-in-law on the boat while he went inside, and he came in with everything he could carry.
Is Walgreens flooded too? So y'all are like walking in water and Walgreens. Huh?
It's walking in about shoulder deep water, which
holy cow!
I don't know how he found the stuff he did, but he did great. He's walking in this water up to his shoulders, and he comes out with like a pole, and on the pole he had as many gallon waters as he could carry. Yeah. He has something with the soap and the alcohol and the cameras and stuff. So we that's what we had. We had our supplies, and we brought that back to that little house. We had it, and we just had some water and collect our thoughts. And then we made another trip to the grocery store, and we had a pirogue from somewhere. I couldn't tell you where I got that pirogue from. But
somehow you run into a pirogue. That's the only, most people, if you're not from Louisiana, a pirogue is like a canoe.
You can.
But you're probably not going to find that anywhere else floating around.
I want to say the pirogue came from the apartment me and Christina was at, because I know whose pirogue it was. But anyway, we have it. And my brother-in-law was like, we're going to go get some stuff from Winn-Dixie. That's a grocery store.
Well, what happened to the other boat?
We left it tied up to the house, so they didn't have it.
And then y'all took the pirogue to the...
Yeah, which was kind of scary, because I wish we wouldn't have separated like that, but we thought it was relatively safe. I don't know what gave us that inclination, because it wasn't good. The people that were running around there, it didn't seem like they was up to any good.
Right.
To some extent.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, there's no safety, there's no law, there's no... Right. I mean, any criminal can do whatever the hell they want, because there's nobody coming to get you. You can't even get rescued at this point.
Right. Right. You're not even talking. You're not making communication with anyone.
Yeah.
That can make a difference for, rescue. So we went to Winn-Dixie and we filled up this pirogue with types of food we could eat that didn't need to be cooked. We filled it up and brought it back. And it seemed like we had an excess amount of food because not too long after that, we just left everything, we abandoned it, and went and got rescued at the Mississippi River, which was the last day we was there. Last day, but then we had one night. But on last day, and we make it to, that night we were sleeping on the roof, and that's when we heard the gunfight on the other side of the river. It was about 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and the creepiest thing about this was there was no light anywhere to see. You could not see a shining light anywhere. New Orleans was blacked out, Slidell, every place around you, even the west bank of the river was blacked out with no electricity, so you couldn't see anything. It was really dark. But you could see a flash from the guns and stuff on that other side of the river. I don't know what happened. I heard later there was a huge shootout with the military and stuff, and that was super scary, and that kind of made it surreal. It was like, we're down here with this. What do we, this isn't going to be good if we can't get help soon. But the next day we woke up, and there was a firefighter who we know by family. And he said, y'all got to make it to the river. Y'all got to make it to the ferry landing today. There's going to be something like, okay, cool. We abandoned everything we could except for what I could carry in my offshore bag. I had my offshore bag with me, had some food, some water, some soap still. We took a bath. And what we learned in hurricane survival, I took a bath in a half or 1 gallon of water. So you just soap up yourself with something, and then you just pour the water to wash it off. So you can take a bath in 1 gallon.
1 gallon.
1 gallon. And when we got to the ferry landing, it was pretty weird to see. We were the cleanest ones there. Other people were injured, bleeding places, muddy, dirty. Some of them had half their clothes on, didn't have anything with them, no supplies, no nothing. And so we felt this weird mentality to hold on to what we had because we know these people didn't have what we had. We had food and water and stuff, provisions in that bag. So
that's got to be a wild feeling, right? Like, now you just got to take care of yourself, and you got other people around you that might want to take what you got for survival.
Yeah, and then, we could leave it like that. So we get on the ferry, which the ferry is usually a car ferry, and it goes from Chalmette and it crosses the river to Lower Algiers. But it went past that and took us directly across New Orleans from the city, which also has a ferry landing if you take the Canal Street ferry.
Yeah.
So we on that landing on the West Bank, and we just starting to pile up. People start to pile up there from these ferries coming from St. Bernard, which our parish president or something had set up to get his people out. They had to keep all that low too because they didn't, just be trying to help a certain people. Everybody was just going to flock to help, which they did anyway. Right across the river on the West Bank.
So this the ferry's like totally packed or what? Like
not totally 100%, but there's more people on there than I've ever seen. Than cars. There's way more people than cars. Than the cars could have fit. There were no cars there because nobody had any, but there were people. And just standing, wondering where we're going. And we end up getting unloaded.
So where in New Orleans where the ferry leaves to go to Algiers, that's where y'all showed up, like off of Canal Street?
Yeah, we ended up showing up there instead. It didn't go to its original dock. It went to the Algiers, the regular Algiers landing on the west bank of the river across from New Orleans.
Okay, so it's at Algiers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 landings on that side of the river.
Okay.
That one, and then there's the one that Chalmette Ferry usually goes to. And but we went to the one closer to the city for some reason, but it seems like everybody else was getting put there too. Maybe from New Orleans.
And I know like Algiers has got that big levee walk. So that's all above water, obviously, at that point.
Yes. When we got to the other side of the river, there was no flood water or anything. So
in Algiers was dry.
It was dry. There was no power, but it was dry.
Wow.
So
okay.
We sat there all that day and the night, basically waiting for who knows what. We didn't know what to expect. And I think we heard something about a rumor, and somebody said buses were coming. And up to this point, we had made no contact with anybody.
How many people we talking? Like
right there, it had here at least, I would say 2,000 people.
2,000 people just not knowing anything. Is there any supplies at this point? No, nobody dropped any water or anything? Or?
No, and that was where we felt, looking back now, you feel bad that you held on to your water that you know you needed, and other people might have needed some too, but you couldn't give it to them.
Yeah.
We didn't know how long it's going to be there, but we did okay. By the time we end up getting on the bus, we really only had a couple bottles of water left and hardly no food and nothing like that. Yeah, so that's how we just waited, and finally they said something about a bus coming. And I have to back up. So that day, we got out through the night, and we were on the roof of the house before we went to the ferry. We had a cell phone. We knew we wanted to leave it off, and to the right moment, we tried to get a signal. So me and my brother-in-law was coming back from the grocery store. We found this supply store with radios, for truck radios, and we took an antenna, and I fastened it around the antenna of the phone, because these are phones that used to have antennas.
Yeah.
And I wrapped it on there real good, and I opened it up and turned it on, and it worked. And we called my dad, who was in Morgan City. And at first, the phone died. It went off, and we missed the call. And then we called right back, and my brother just barely got out. We're all right. Dawn's all right. Steve's all right. Christina, everybody's okay. And we could hear them cheering in the background, like yelling and just being just ecstatic. Right. And that was because up to that point, we hadn't heard from them. They hadn't heard from us in 4 days, but they were watching the news about the flooding. Right. And, the death toll was rising. So there was when they finally heard from us, that's the first time we heard from them. Right. They heard from us. And then when we was on the West Bank by the ferry landing to leave on the bus, we get on the bus, I'm like, let's wait to get a little ways. Wherever we going, we don't know. And this bus driver stands up and goes, they told me we're taking y'all to LSU. And that seemed like the greatest idea, because we started cheering and crying and happy and stuff. And so we creep through the city, which is pitch black. I don't even know how the bus driver knew where he was. And we made it to Baton Rouge, to LSU.
Yeah, where at LSU?
We went to the school. To the stadium, I think. Outside the parking lot by the stadium, they had everything set up. I don't know who organized it, but on the way there, we ended up getting another cell phone signal. We said, "Dad, we're going to LSU." That's the only thing we had to tell him. Yeah. And they met us there at the parking lot of the big stadium.
Man, that is insane. Like, what an insane story. Yeah. But crazy. So, like, through this whole incredible experience, I know that it made a big impression on you, because you're not messing around with hurricanes no more. I mean, if it's even thinking about coming towards Louisiana, you're out, right? I mean,
people, they remind me, it's like, don't do this, Steve. It's like, don't worry about it. I got my family now to take care of. Yeah. I try to make a plan, even though whatever plan you make a plan. Even though if it fails or falls through, that you change it, at least you have a plan. And that's one thing we always didn't have back then. We always just said, we're just going to stay. So, but yeah, it has made its mark on us. The one thing is just that knowing the area is not the same anymore. We never did move back. We never got a place back there. We just lived in Lafayette ever since. And I know a lot of our family members moved back, but I don't know how that feels, but it just had too much on us, where we just didn't feel like moving back. Yeah.
Well, we gained a lot of people from that area to Lafayette. I mean, I remember I was starting to get real estate, and I mean, within 1 week we sold every house, because at the first couple of weeks they didn't know if they were going. New Orleans, community here in Lafayette didn't know if they were going to be going back or not. And, they were finding rentals and stuff. But then once they figured out and they got word that they're not going back for months and months and months, everybody just bought as many houses as, they tried to find a house, and it didn't matter. So, I mean, we gained a lot of really good people. I think it's impacted our culture in a positive way we have a lot of really amazing families, business owners that, if it wasn't for Katrina, they wouldn't be here now, and so like we're glad to have you as a neighbor here, because like if Katrina didn't happen, we would have probably never crossed paths. And it's interesting to know, like, those type of events, although they're tragic and extreme, I mean, in the long run, it's amazing where everybody ends up.
Yeah, I really didn't know anything about Lafayette except that we used to drive through on 90, and that was it. I didn't know the left or right of it.
Which isn't a very pretty drive. It's like coming into Lafayette, if you're on 90 and just heading to, and I mean, it's not really Lafayette. It's just, that's kind of like our industrial,
The main thing that stood out to me about Lafayette, was when I heard is the Cajun Navy coming down there, and that's pretty impressive. The stuff
that was cool how they jumped into action.
Yes, indeed. And that's a big part of the story I like to mention. I pray God bless the unsung heroes of stuff like that, tragedies, is along with the law enforcement, fire department, and people that sent in there to do work. The real people that I wanted to get notarized in this was family members, taking in family members.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't think that's easy, but try to do that for a month or so at a time and you'll see. But so God bless my cousin, Chris and Liz, taking us in and doing what you did for us. And we appreciate that. And everybody else who took in my family members, of refuge sakes. That's heroes right there. Yeah.
It's cool to see how Louisiana really came together, to see, family helping families, and, strangers helping strangers. And, it was interesting, but I got to tell you, like, I've never heard a story like yours. And, I feel like, I've heard about experiences like that, but until you hear it from a firsthand account, it's a little bit different. So thank you so much for sharing today, man. And, I hope I know it's made an impact on my family and how we look at hurricanes. And I hope that, through this, story, that maybe it'll save somebody's life,
So, yeah. And with that, I don't know to express how I would change, except that with a hurricane dealing like that, a Category 5 is just, you're at the mercy of whatever happens, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It really is. You just wish you wouldn't have done it. And when you're in it and you're staying there, you don't know when relief is coming.
Yeah.
You don't know when the storm going to end and when I'm going to feel calm in a little bit. You just wish for it, and it doesn't come. And that's a good way to try to hopefully get people to leave, get yourself safe, your home. You can replace it, move somewhere else eventually, but you can't replace your life. And I know this storm took a lot of lives, probably the most since you can remember, since the Camille and Betsy days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the best thing you want to do.
And you never know where it's going to end up, man. So, like, if one's coming our way, we got to, take it seriously. What's the worst thing that happens? Nothing happens, and you just come back, But if you stay, the worst thing is unimaginable what could happen.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Steven, thank you. I mean, on behalf of, my family, our audience, Tommy, thank you so much for sharing. And hopefully, people can, take your story and it won't happen to somebody else. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.